Phase 2, Chapter 18. It was mid-afternoon, a good 5 hours before moonrise, when the flight touched down in Honolulu. But already the Mai Tais were swaying, the pineapples were jiggling, and the mongooses were mating, and the coconuts were rolling in ecstasy. The Hawaiian sun, in contrast to say, the Nebraska sun, had obviously fallen under the influence of the moon, and was given to deporting itself in a fairly feminine fashion. Not that the Hawaii sun wouldn't fry your hide off should you show it disrespect, but it had a romantic aura, a decidedly lunar attitude toward Amore that the sun of Mexico would consider soft and weak. Despite the tangle of traffic, the din of condominium construction, the smoking sugar refineries, and the strange spectacle of Japanese tourists roaming the hot beaches in business suits and street shoes, Hawaii was, indeed, a travelogue tableau, a living pap smear for the paradise flu. So goofy/erotic was the Hawaiian language that the street signs read like invitations to pagan whoop-jamboreehoos, and nookie was on the tip of every sober tongue. Hawaiian was a language that could name a fish huma huma kuna kuna kupua, and a bird oh, and never mind that the bird was larger than the fish. Huma huma kuna kuapua, a typewriter that enjoys that word as much as the Remington SL3 couldn't be all bad. Still played in Hawaiian waters, not 50 yards from the leather soles of Sony executives, but the oh, that gorgeous honeysucker, was long gone. Hawaiian royalty favored the tail feathers of the oh for their ceremonial capes. Hawaii's rulers were mammoth. Their capes were very long. It took a lot of tail feathers to make a king a cape. The oh was plucked into extinction. Spaghetti-o. Although the ecological implications would have appalled her, Lee Cherie could fancy herself in oh. If our pale princess could have chosen a land to be queen of, Hawaii was it. The instant she stepped off the jetliner, her heart began to pump pure hibiscus juice. If her hands were tied behind her and the world had Hawaii in its wall safe, she would have figured out a way to get it out. Hawaii made the mouth of her soul water. Alas, Lee Cherie hadn't much opportunity for reverie because of frog problems. Her plane had landed on Oahu merely minutes before her connecting flight on inter-island Aloha Airlines was scheduled to depart for Maui. She and Julietta had to run, if you could call Julietta's scurrying a run, from one end of Honolulu's airport to the other. So intent was their dash that they failed to notice that Bernard Mickey Wrangle was loping along beside them. 19. The flight to Maui was as bumpy as a kite's. As the small plane was tossed about by drafts, several passengers acquired the hue of Hawaiian foliage. Lee Cherie, however, had been driven to the airport that morning by Chuck, the chauffeur, and after such a ride, it would have taken more than a little turbulent air to unnerve her. Julietta was simply too old to be unnerved by anything, although she was still pouting about the confiscation of her totem. As for Bernard M. Wrangle, who sat behind the princess, studying her red hair, his heart thumped peacefully against the explosives taped to his chest. As the aircraft bobbed, so did Lee Cherie's mind, up and down from one level to another, thinking one moment of the charms of Hawaii, to which she had a mild addiction, thinking the next of the Carefest and the great good that might come from it, bouncing to thoughts of herself, who she was, and who she might be. I'm a princess, she reminded herself, with a minimum of conviction. I'm a princess. A princess who grew up in a blackberry patch near Seattle, who's never so much as set a tennis shoe in the nation where her royal blood was formed. A princess who doesn't know diddly squat about princessing. A princess who's behaved like a twit and a twat, who's been well disappointed in men and romance, who's a bit confused, who's got a lot to learn, but a princess, after all, just as fucking much as Caroline or Anne, and although in the last quarter of the 20th century the very idea of royalty may seem artificial, archaic, and somewhat decadent, I insist on my princesshood because without it, I'm just another physically attractive woman. With that, I went to college, but it didn't do me any good luck, and nothing much to offer anyone. If I'm lost as a lover, I'm still right here as a human. I feel the pain of humanity inside me, in my tummy, about 8 inches above the peach fish. Whether I'm unduly sensitive to this pain because I'm a princess, could the whole world be the pea under my mattress? I don't know. But because I'm a princess, I might be able to do something to help lessen humanity's pain. And the Carefest just may show me the way to do it. I wonder if Ralph is staying at our hotel. I hope I packed my No Nukes t-shirt. Don't Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young hang out at La Haina? Can I drink more than one Mai Tai without taking on the aroma of an aroused butterfly? Her thoughts dipped and lifted in unstable air. Before long, they had passed over Molokai and could see the reddish corona of Haleakala rising in the southeast like the stone in a Truman Capote mood ring. Maui, whispered Lee Cherie to Julieta. Maui. Her own red top bounced as she sat up straight in her seat. Bernard, the woodpecker, regarded it with the gaze of an expert. 20. Suspecting that the authorities might run checks on hair dye purchases, Bernard made his own coloring from roots and bark. It had a particular smell, but women did not find it unattractive. To Bernard, the odor evoked memories of vulture shadows and wolf howls, of cocaine, high explosives, and sure-footed steeds, of the hideout behind the waterfall. As for its effect on others, he'd been asked more than once if he didn't shampoo with root beer. He limited the dyeing to the hair on his head, and for that reason he was careful to make love only in the dark. Once he spilled the dye all over his shoes. From then on, he dyed with his boots on. The 12 most famous redheads. : Number 1, Lucille Ball, comedienne. 2, General George Custer, military maverick. 3, Lizzie Borden, hatchet woman. 4, Thomas Jefferson, revolutionary. 5, Red Skelton, comic. 6, Bernard Shaw, playwright. 7, Judas Iscariot, informer. 8, Mark Twain, humorist. 9, Woody Allen, humorist. 10, Margaret Sanger, feminist. 11, Edna St. Vincent Millay, a libertine poet. 12, Bernard Mickey Wrangle, bomber. From this list, the analytically minded might conclude that persons with red hair tend to be either dangerous or funny. But of the dozen, only one ever had to hide his or her hue. Even Judas flew his natural colors. Judas Iscariot top. How did Bernard feel about dressing his woodpecker strands in suits of crow? From the admiring looks he aimed at Lee Cherie's crown, and Haleakala's shallow observer might be inclined to compare him to a connoisseur of rubies trapped under a coal chute. Upon more careful examination, however, one would have to report that he took a very nearly delicious pleasure in smuggling his curls about, their blaze concealed from the cold eye of the law by the thinnest millimeter of pigment. And of course, Bernard, as all men, carried around in his trousers the most renowned redhead of all, characteristically funny and dangerous. 21. Aboard Aloha Airlines, Flight 23, Bernard wasn't the only admirer of Lee Cherie. From the seat in front of her, a young man with a long, wavy beard, aloha shirt, and hibiscus blossoms intertwined in his ponytail, had turned around to engage her in conversation. He was on his way to the Carefest, he said, to teach meditation techniques at a workshop. The young man tried to interest Lee Cherie in his program. He offered to give her personal instruction in meditation free of charge. She seemed to be seriously considering it. Bernard leaned forward until his freckled chin rested atop Lee Cherie's seat. "Yum," he said. The princess flinched, but did not glance back. The young man in front of her began showing her his puka shell necklace. While fingering the pukas, he spoke quietly to her of deep relaxation, inner peace, and the wisdom of letting things flow. "Yum," repeated Bernard. He said it very close to the royal ear. This time she spun around. Her expression was indignant. "I beg your pardon." Bernard smiled as sweetly as a retarded jack-o'-lantern. "It's my mantra." Lee Cherie glowered at him, as only someone of the redheaded persuasion can glower. He was dressed all in black and had bad teeth. He was wearing Donald Duck sunglasses, kitty glasses. She turned back to the meditation instructor, who at once ceased scowling at Bernard and gave her a sympathetic look. "There are only two mantras," said Bernard. "Yum and yuck. Mine is yum." It sounded halfway logical, but the princess refused to respond. She squeezed Julieta's hand. She asked the junior guru in front how meditation could help alleviate suffering in the world. "Yum," said Bernard. "Yum." Lee Cherie ignored him. The other passengers regarded him strangely. "Do you need anything, sir?" asked the stewardess. Bernard shrugged. He looked out the window. He looked at the rosy rim of the big volcano. Haleakala, house of the sun. If Haleakala was where the sun called home, what was the moon's address? Did the moon live in France on Main Street? 22. It was Haleakala, erupting in tandem with a lesser volcano that created the island of Maui. It must have been a show. The crater was 7½ miles across. Holy shit. The cone more than 10,000 feet high, yet Haleakala had a presence at which even the most impressive measurements didn't hint. Such an eerie, unfamiliar place was Haleakala that there was a tendency to associate it with other worlds, outer spaces. Indeed, an unusually large percentage of visitors who camped there overnight in order to view the famous Haleakala sunrise, the sun awakening in its own bedroom, swore to have seen oddly lighted forms in the sky. To the dormant volcano, with its crumbly cromlechs, its lunar contours, its black and red sands, supernatural properties came to be attributed. Many regarded it a universal center, an intergalactic connecting point, a cosmic bean hill, the Earth terminal for spaceships of all degrees of substance and visibility. So many people claim to have seen UFOs buzzing Haleakala that it turned into a mecca for flying saucer fans and would-be cosmic cosmopolitans. Individuals, entire cults with outer space orientation settled in the valleys near the base of the mountain. When the word of the impending Carefest spread from Lahaina to the Maui interior, the various flying saucer groups banded together to insist that they would be included in the conference. The fact that Timothy Leary had been invited to the Carefest to present his theories on orbiting space colonies pleased but didn't placate them. The future of the Earth is bound up with the future of the universe, they reasoned. Some went so far as to state that the future of the Earth was entirely in the hands of superior beings on distant planets. The Carefest would be a sham if UFO scholars and intermediaries weren't included, they said. "The agenda is already set, and it's crowded as it is," protested the organizers. The saucer people didn't care. They raced their kryptonite engines, billowed their green exhaust. From the 13th floor of the Darth Vader building, the communiques and manifestos issued. A compromise was reached. The Maui saucerites were granted use of the conference facilities on Sunday, the day prior to the official opening of the Carefest, and the day that Lee Cherie arrived in Lahaina. As the princess and her chaperone checked into to the Pioneer Inn, a UFO gathering was already in progress there. How peculiar, remarked Lee Cherie, noticing the flowing robes and the wide eyes of the delegates. There was no one in the lobby who looked the slightest like Ralph Nader. What the hell? It was Sunday. Sunday is Sunday, even in Hawaii. No volume of orchid nectar, no wardrobe of OO plumage could change the color of Sunday from that of buttermilk, toothpaste, camembert cheese. Lee Cherie knew better than to jump to conclusions on a Sunday. After unpacking, she seated herself out on the lanai, where luxuriously awash in tropical twilight she perused the Sunday edition of the Honolulu Advertiser. A lanai was a veranda in Hawaii. Oh, thank you. But Lanai was also the name of one of the smallest of the Hawaiian islands. The island of Lanai was close to Maui, a sort of veranda of Maui, and was clearly visible from Lahaina. In those days, Lanai was almost entirely in the possession of the Dole Corporation, which planted it in pineapples and limited its visitors. But Lanai hadn't always been a company island. As a matter of fact, there was a time when it was outlaw territory, a refugee for fugitives. If a Hawaiian lawbreaker could make it to Lanai, he was home free. That was the agreement. Police had voluntarily suspended their authority at the shoreline of Lanai. Moreover, and if an escaped prisoner or a culprit fleeing a crime could survive 7 years on the island, which had little food or fresh water, charges against him were dropped, and he could return to society a free man. Maybe that's why Bernard Mickey Wrangle stood on the Lahaina waterfront staring at Lanai, staring hard, shifting weight from one foot to the other, occasionally saying "yum" under his breath. The woodpecker had been a fugitive, this last time, for more than 6 years. In 11 months, the statute of limitations in his case would expire, and he would become, in the eyes of the law, free. The woodpecker stared at the former outlaw island until its margins melted like raw sugar into the steeping tea of night. Then he crossed the street into the Pioneer Inn, the restored old whalers' hotel, where the usual crowd of international beach bums, cool kamainas, sailboat crewmen, amateur adventurers, itinerant waitresses, students on the Metamorphose from Midwest bookworms into South Pacific night owls. The University of Pineapple is my alma papaya. I graduated mango cum laude. Rock musicians of varying degrees of celebrity and expertise, young divorcees, older ones went to Waikiki. Divers, coral, salvage, skin, and muff divers. Puka salesmen, t-shirt airbrushers, and Berkeley radicals with a secret romantic streak made themselves at home, coming and going, flirting and hustling, posing and preening, scheming and letting off steam. A gin or rum never far from the lips, a fortune, a nirvana, or a revolution always just out of reach. Mingling with the regulars on this Sunday evening were freshly arrived Carefest delegates, famous and unknown. Plus, a man and woman from the planet Argon had slipped away from the UFO conference to have a pina colada. Plus, the woodpecker. The woodpecker didn't drink tequila. The Pioneer Bar was so crowded that much dry time elapsed between waiters' visits, so the woodpecker ordered triples. Lanai, that arid sanctuary, eventually had stimulated his thirst buds. Slurping his tequilas with a noise that sounded not dissimilar to yum, he scanned the room in vain for a glimpse of long red hair, and felt the 7 sticks of explosive pressing almost erotically against the freckles of his flesh. Now, tequila may be the favored beverage of outlaws, but that doesn't mean it gives them preferential treatment. In fact, tequila probably had betrayed as many outlaws as the central nervous system had dissatisfied wives. Tequila, scorpion honey, harsh dew of the doglands, essence of Aztec, crema de cacti, tequila, oily and thermal like the sun in solution, tequila, liquid geometry of passion. Tequila, the buzzard god who copulates in mid-air with the ascending souls of dying virgins. Tequila, firebug in the house of good taste. O tequila, savage water of sorcery, what confusion of mischief your sly rebellious drops do generate. Without doubt, it was tequila that made Bernard impatient, that befuddled him into mistaking the UFO conference for the Geotherapy Carefest. As a consequence, the Saucer Conference was blown ass over teacup.